Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. I am bringing you brilliance today, as always, and I'm so excited to have Jeff Panik with me today. However, before we talk about him, I just need you to follow this podcast. It's so important. It just helps people know that this is out there because you're about to get a masterclass in all things finances today, and I'm pretty sure it's worth listening to. So make sure that you're following, share it with everybody you know. And today we have somebody with us who's a first generation college student. He is a U.S. Army vet. He is a financial advisor slash guru. He's a family focused guy who happens to also have a very big passion for travel. And he's our dear guest today. So, Jeff, welcome to Productive Joy.
Thank you for so much for having me. I'm really excited and look forward to speaking with you today.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, here's what I have learned in my 47 years is people have an incredibly short attention span until you grab them. So, what's something that you can tell us about you or what we're going to talk about today that's going to grab people's attention?
I'm a financial advisor now, and really a lot of what I've taken away and learned is really from my own mistakes and learning from 25 years of working in the financial services industry of what works and what doesn't and the kind of pitfalls. And so I think I could probably provide a few nuggets of information that might be beneficial where you might be able to maybe, if there's a Y in the road, you might go the right direction possibly.
Oh, exciting. Okay. Well, I think most people like money, right? Like they're like, oh, okay, I'd like to
Yes.
have more of that. And you help people do that. And you've even written a book that will help people do that. So tell us a little bit about your book. And then I really want to dig into you. So, okay. So
Sure,
tell us
sure.
about this book.
Sure. So I was looking to write a book, and a lot of people do books on retirement in my business. And I looked at my kind of background and story and kind of where I came from. And I really wish there was something that I could have used as a blueprint or just really as a structure that I could have used going out of high school, going into college, making decisions about student loans and direction in life. And I decided to do a book on financial literacy for young adults.
Gosh. Okay. So we have already established I have 23-year-old twins. You have a 23-year-old. How old are other children, or do you have
Uh,
others?
13 is the other one.
Oh,
So
my.
a little
Okay.
bit,
So
yeah. So we say it's like a built-in babysitter, if you will.
that's kind of fun. Okay, so we understand this whole young adult piece, and I'm an educator by trade, have been an educator all my life, specifically high school kids. Now I teach adults. But this doesn't exist in the educational system like it should. They're trying, right? Like, so I live in
Yes.
Florida. We just adopted a new financial literacy plan. But why did it take so long, right? So tell us why that was your target. And I think it's a great target because I know it doesn't
Yes.
exist.
Yeah. So I look at it, and you mentioned the adoption, and really, I would say the adoption is still very slow. Really, only about 22 states have plans to put programs in place or have programs in place now out of in the United States. And so, if you look at it, kids learn about everything in high school, especially at the bigger schools. They can take electives for everything. But the one thing that they're really missing out on is what I would call consumer finance. They can take an economics class. They could take various math classes. They could even take finance classes, but they usually don't teach you just how to do things as simple as balance your checkbook or what is even a checkbook. How do you even sign a check?
Do
And
those
then
do those still exist? Like,
they
do,
they do, and it's really even with banking, how do you even find a bank? Simple things that after a few years of being an adult, a lot of things that are taken for granted, it's almost like you have to rewind and say, well, if you don't have mentors or role models or parents that have time where they can sit there and actually explain things and feel comfortable about it, which, it communication is essential in anything. It's essential around money in particular. Most issues in life are created by lack of communication or someone not being fully transparent about things. And
yeah.
I look at it and say it's just difficult because, as you mentioned, there's not really that many good resources. And when the kids are starting out, if they go to college with significant debt and they aren't really sure what direction to go, It's really a recipe for not really, having a real tough time getting out of the gates, out of the when you're running.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am so grateful that this is the direction you decided to go with your brilliance. So let's back up because I'm going to guess that there was an impetus for you wanting to help this particular age group. So tell us your story. How
Sure.
did you get here?
Sure, sure. So I was the first one to go to college in my family. And, I didn't really have, I would say, mentors. I didn't have a lot of reference points. I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania in an area that wasn't super affluent. And so you had, my father passed away when I was an infant. And so my mother did the best she could, never remarried. She was an administrative assistant and, just spent a lot of time working to
Wow.
try to
Okay.
make sure I had everything that she could give me. The one thing that she couldn't really help me with was really understanding the more complex things as it relates to student loans and some of the other things. And so I ended up going to college. I didn't really take college necessarily as serious as I should have. And I ended up, kind of bouncing around with a few different majors, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do after college. About 6 months before around the time I was graduating, I received a letter from Sally Mae, and I was so clueless. I thought it was a magazine subscription service,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Sally Mae, if you don't know, is a loan servicer, and
Yeah.
when you get the first letter from them, it's typically going to be sticker shock. Where I ended up getting a letter, and it was around, I think it was going to be about $1,000 a month
Oh.
for 10 years, and so I didn't really have very much experience, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I kicked different things around and I ended up going in the army. The army had a program where they paid off your college loans for the service. And so it was deferred and they paid it off over time. And it really helped me, I would say, build structure and really, I would say, learn just how to communicate with people, whether from all kinds of backgrounds. And I think that's the thing that's really missing these days, especially with young adults. And after getting out of the army, I was ended up going in a training program in the financial services industry, and that was probably about 25 years ago. And it's been just a wonderful career so far. And I can't say enough about my time in the army. It wasn't certainly there's plenty of times that were pretty miserable, but in the end, it kind of really benefited me from the standpoint of the structure that I didn't have, as
Yeah.
well as it put me around people that were very driven and that were focused on, completing a mission, a task, and getting to the other side. And, I look back now at going into college, I was completely oblivious. I was just expecting that I would go and I would just learn everything that I needed. And, I would just start, working and it would be just all so simple. And, a lot of times what the kids find out, it's very simple until, the Sally Mae or the loan statements
Right.
come.
Well, and first of all, thank you for your service. That just thank you. Also, I'm also a first generation college student, and it's one of those things that you don't know. I didn't know the difference between in state and out of state tuition. So I lived in Virginia, but I was only 4 miles from the North Carolina line, so I went to school in North Carolina. I didn't know that basically doubled my cost.
Yes.
So I get it. I fully get it. Not knowing, and I love that you are helping people figure it out in a way that's understandable. That's just fantastic.
Yeah, and it really comes down to having communication. If you have a child and you wait until they're 17 or 18 and they've already filled out the applications, that's not really a good time to have, a conversation about just finances with them. And unfortunately, more so than often, that's what ends up happening. The earlier that you can start, the better. The more that you can focus and talk about, community college, trade schools, looking at getting scholarships, filling out scholarships, doing in-state, doing things that will bring them out with a lower amount of debt. And even if you have money saved for them, you know, it could be much better served either buying a house or paying for graduate school.
Right.
And and that's really, and there's been a few studies. There was a study that came out recently. What would you guess the amount of students that actually change their major at least once?
Oh, a percentage wise,
percentage.
I'd say 80 or higher.
You're right. You're right. It's about 83%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if
Well, and so fun fact about me. So for the last 11 years, I've worked for an organization that helps students get to college or have options when they graduate by making educators better at what they do. And we do all of what you're saying because the reality is, especially for our first gen kids, they don't know the difference between a loan and a grant. They don't know that if they go out of state, it's going to be more expensive. They don't know any of those things yet and nobody's telling them. So we do. And we make it a very intentional point to make sure that they also know how to pay for it. So
yeah,
if you're going to go, wherever you're going to go, trade school, 2 year, 4 year career, how are you going to pay for it? What does that look like? What does the military afford you if you want to go in that direction? Because if students don't know what their options are, they struggle.
and I would say even the parents, when I'm meeting prospects and clients, sometimes I'll see, clients that have and prospects that have loans, from their children, their
Yep.
parent loans, and they're trying to figure out how to retire, but they have these loans as well, and it's really goes back to really understanding and managing expectations. The earlier, the better.
Yeah. So this podcast is for leaders who want to do it differently, who want to see things differently, who want to make sure that they are finding productive joy. And so before I ask you to define productive joy for me, what would you say to them in the space that you're in? 25 years in the financial industry, what would you tell leaders that they need to be doing with either their employees or their own children that will help them land in a better place than you and I did to begin with?
Well, I think it's a matter of just spending actual, yeah, and this is really I use the example of the holidays and our our cell phone or digital addiction, I would almost call it, in terms of social media and just having everything being immediate. Everything has to be right then. If you can have Thanksgiving and the holidays and you can put down your devices and you spend time with them, and I use the example of some of the best lessons are learned just over games. If you
Yeah.
play Life, Monopoly, just simple games, you can learn a lot about just consumer finance, and if you can explain some of the things, good decisions, bad decisions, life's great because you can talk about the things that you did right and wrong while you're playing.
Yeah.
And I think if you can kind of humanize it to make sure that they understand, because I think a lot of times kids in particular these days, when they get into, they're starting to think about college and it's a whole structure of they have to build out their resume before,
In the 7th
they're-
grade.
before they're, yeah, in the seventh grade, before their parents ever even thought about having
Yeah.
a resume. Most of their parents probably thought about getting a resume when they were in their 20s. So you have to say, well, let's just take a step back. You don't have to be perfect, and I think that's really the important thing. And you don't have to do what other you think other people want you to do, which I think is another thing that a lot of people get just brushed up in. And there's so many, I see so many people that are just unhappy. And if you can find something, and again, work life isn't perfect, and it's never going to be. But if you're in a situation where you just wake up and you dread every day going somewhere, that's just not the way to go about life.
No, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like I
Yes.
loved that you said just play games with them, right? Teach them life through the game of life or through
Yes.
Monopoly. Our daughter is in the process of buying a house. She's 23. And my husband has been in the mortgage industry for 20 years. But what he's realizing in having these conversations with her about all the different things, whether it's appraisals or escrow or inspections or, timeframes, all the things, is that we didn't talk to them about that when we could have. And he knew all these things. I don't know. And I live with him and love him very much, but I don't know all the details, right?
Mhm.
So it's also about recognizing that we have to leverage the humans in our space and actually talk to them. Like you said, put the phone down and actually have real conversations around. So maybe that's the nugget that people will take with them
And
today is
and,
talk to your
and
kids.
exactly. And I mean, I would say the other thing to put into practice is to actually put it into practice. I always say if they're getting into high school and they're thinking about doing various careers and different other things, there's certainly programs that allow them to shadow, find a mentor, allow them to see if what they even are thinking about doing is really what they want to do.
Yeah.
They may spend a day or two thinking they want to be an accountant and they just can't, they sit there and they look at the
They didn't know
numbers.
that was about numbers.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's just kind of one of those things until you do it for, whether it's a month, 4 to 6 weeks, a certain amount of time, the sooner that you can check off the things that you do not want to do, the sooner you can find what you want to do.
Absolutely. Actually, I was listening to a podcast, The Mindset Mentor, this morning, and in it they talked about this woman who decided that she actually no, I'm lying to you. It was Ignite the CEO Within. And this woman had become a CEO very early on, but she studied accounting because when she looked, it was the second highest paid. She didn't even
Right.
know what it meant and
Right.
hated everything about it. But that was what she studied because she thought she could make money. And so it's also just knowing who you are is a super important part of this. So let's back up for another second. We've backed up twice now. You told
Yes.
us about you told us about your book, but I want to know if you had to define productive joy, what would your definition be?
Well, I would say it's probably subjective. And I would go back to kind of what you just said about the accounting situation.
Because you love it.
Yeah, yeah. You either some people love it, some people hate it, and it's really a matter of what you love and what you may love, someone else may hate. And I can give a good example that I have is I would use the example of camping. There's certain people that just love to go camping. They enjoy it. They enjoy spending time outside, sleeping outside. And then there's other people that are deathly afraid of bugs, and
Mm,
they would do anything other than camp. And so, really it's what you find and what you enjoy on an individual basis. And, it's not what someone else enjoys. And really, I would say, what you want to do is you want to find the people that you care about, your family and friends. You want to find things that you have in common that you can do with them that you can enjoy and take memories from.
absolutely. I love that definition and I totally agree. What's been fun is I've had lots of guests on here and I've yet to get the same definition twice for productive joy. Everybody, well, I shouldn't say that. There are some common themes. Some of the themes include things like it's a choice and it's something that you have to work towards and it doesn't just happen and that it's not permanent, right? Like joy is fleeting and we need to be okay with that because if you were never not joyous, then you don't know what joy actually feels like. So it's also recognizing that the good and the bad both need to be there. So I love that. I'm not a camper either. That's not how I would choose to spend my time. Give me a nice hotel in Italy, like
Yes.
we talked about earlier,
Yes.
and I'm good.
Yeah. I'll take the air conditioning all day long. So,
Definitely, definitely. All right, so you've written this book, and you clearly serve people in this space all day, every day. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you actually do? So, what's your role in the finance space?
yeah. So what I try to do is sit down with people, and I always say, and this a good example would be, I would say when I started out in the business, there wasn't really that good of a way to get information. You would have to come to someone like me, and you'd have to try to have them help you figure things out. Now you can go on Google. And if you type in a financial topic, retirement planning or, college loans, all these kind of things in Google or other search sites, you can get 300 million hits. And really what the problem now is, I would say there's over information and there's really a generalization on everything now. And I think that has become almost a problem
Mm,
because if it doesn't fit, a lot of people will just shut down. And I use the example of budgeting as an example in that light, where there's probably about 7 or 8 budgeting strategies. There's not one that is right. It's the one that works for you and
right.
that you can stick with that will help you develop a habit of budgeting. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be what your neighbor does. It's really what you feel comfortable with and your spouse for that matter.
Yeah. Well, so true. And so I just actually recently listened to one of your podcasts on budgeting. It was fabulous. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast too? Because I'm going to guess that not everybody, it doesn't matter how successful you are in business, you probably still need some guidance in the financial space. So unless you're a financial advisor. So how would people find you?
Yeah, so it's the podcast names it's between life and money. And really that's a lot of things and in particular with money. There's a balance with everything, But the more that your finances get out of balance, the more your life typically will get out of balance. And really, it's difficult because I have a lot of people that will come to me and say, well, they're ready to go, and they say, what do we need to do? I'm going to do it all right now. Well, that just doesn't work. What you have to do is put together a timeline, and you have to have a structure to work through to get to whatever you're trying to do, whatever your goal is. And you're trying, whether it's a short-term goal, like you want to save for a wedding, whether it's a longer term goal, retirement, whether you want to do something in the middle. You want to make sure you have everything in place and you understand what you're getting yourself into, and you want it to be realistic. And that is the thing. I think that everyone just gets so caught up at the moment that they listen to a podcast or they watch a show or TV, and they say, I want to buy a rental property. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they want to do it right then. Well, that just doesn't work. It's really take a step back. And what you want to do is have a plan in place where you work through, you come up with a list, or that's the one good thing online. You can come up with a list, and you can see what you feel comfortable with the lists that you come up with that's going to work for you. And there's Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, there's no shortage of people. And if you put all their information together, it's all, I would say for the most part, good information. It's a matter of finding what will work for you.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about it with the definition of productive joy, right? Like, so it's subjective, it's personal, it's
Mm,
yours. And I think sometimes we think we all have to fit in the same box, and that's just not how we're wired.
No,
So go ahead and recognize there's more than one box, and but you've got to pay attention to your money. To steal one of Dave's lines, you got to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went, right?
exactly. And I go back, I think the fundamental, really the foundation of your finances, really, especially, if you're married in a relationship, is really communication, because, I've had situations where I've met with prospects, people that are looking to find a financial advisor, and, the two spouses are focused working, they both have their careers, they're not really looking at each other's finances or even talking about it together. And so you start talking about their benefits. Well, they both have separate benefits. You start talking about a perfect example or the streaming. The streaming is my favorite topic because I could ask couples, and at least I would say probably about eight out of 10 times they have replicated streaming accounts, where they're
Oh,
paying like 14 to $20 a month, that they could be saving because they haven't really communicated or talked about it. They just have separate accounts.
yeah.
And, there's a lot of things that you can put together to really generate a fair amount of savings. But in order to do that, you have to talk about it.
Well, it's clear to me that you are a teacher by nature, right? So the best financial advisors, I think, teach people things instead of just telling them, "Put your money here, it'll be fine." And you're doing a beautiful job of that, both with your book, with your
Thank
podcast. Like
you.
you're giving back, and so I'm so grateful for people like you who know your lane. You know that accounting is kind of your thing, right? Money talks to you, and you are able to help others. So a huge thank you for that. I know I could talk to you all day, but
Yeah,
I have to ask you your rapid fire questions, and
sure.
I want people to be able to find you. Like, is there a website in addition
Yes.
to Between Life and Money? That's your podcast, but
Yeah.
how else might people find you?
Sure. Sure. So I have my company's name is Balance Wealth Partners. It's kind of like Balance Life. And I also have a website for my book and it's just jeffreypanik.com. And you can easily just Google me. My last name is pretty unique and it ends with a K, Panik. But there's plenty of, I try to make it very useful, helpful information that's not, it's not product specific. It's really focused on trying to hopefully take away a few nuggets or some information that will help you in your everyday life.
I love it. Well, I'm so grateful for you doing what you're doing, and both of my children will be given this information
Yes.
for sure as they're figuring it out. Because I wish somebody had stopped me at 23 and said, "Hey, here are the three things." Because my parents did not talk about money. As a matter of fact, they filed for bankruptcy and divorce when I was 19. And so never was it talked about. Jason, my husband's parents, didn't talk to him about money either. And so we just kind of flew blind for a long time. And it wasn't until we got so frustrated with the fact that all we ever did was fight about money instead of talking about money that we said, you know what? This is dumb. Like this, we're both working really hard. We should make
Mhm,
our money work for us.
mhm.
So you could save people a lot of time, is what I'm saying. All right. So are you ready for rapid fire?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure though. We'll
Oh my
see.
gosh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. There are no wrong answers. Okay,
Sure.
so first question, how would you define fun?
Well, I think fun is, that's I mentioned about joy being subjective. Fun is kind of the same way. Fun is really, I would say, something where you can take yourself away from every day. And I would say if a week, 2 weeks, a month from when you were having the fun, you can go back when you're having a hard time, when you're
Mm.
having a bad day, and think about that. And I think if you can have those days, it offsets the bad days.
Yeah, so you make memories. I love that. Great answer. Okay, how do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
I think the first thing is that you want to make sure that you're honest in your core values and your beliefs. You want to make sure that you're not, you know, based upon the person you're meeting with or who you're around, you're tailoring your behavior for them. That's a lot of times you see that with teenagers.
Yep.
They just get out of themselves and they end up having a lot of problems because they're just not themselves. They're what they think other people think they should be.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. All right. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
That's so I would say, the one thing is that you have to understand there's going to be a lot of bad days. Hopefully, if you do the right things in life, there's going to be a lot of better days.
Mm,
And that gets back to looking at fun and having a good times in life because the good times in life will help you think and make it through the bad times. I think the other thing that I see a lot is people get so upset. I can use the elections as an example or, just current events, geopolitical, this or that, they get so upset with it that they just get overwhelmed.
mm.
And I always say you want to focus on what you can control. If you can't control it, you can only do so much. And so, what you want to do is focus and influence what you can control because I think that will help your day become better.
Love that. All right, last question. So people, I've studied the human brain for my whole career, and I know that people really only remember one thing of a 30-minute podcast. So if you could only have them take away one nugget, what would that nugget be?
I think it would be that whatever you want to do, whether it's you want to pay off your college loans or whether you want to save for retirement or you're thinking about retiring, you just don't do it all at once. One thing you have to do is start, and that is you really want to start and you want to set realistic goals and you want to make whatever process you're using, you want to make it a habit. And if you can do that, you'll get to whatever finish line you want to get to, whether it's retirement, whether it's, saving for college, paying off your college loans. But it's about being realistic and developing habits. And if you can do that, you will be successful.
Oh, I love it. Jeff, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
could have been doing any number of things besides this, but you're choosing to spend this time with our Productive Joy family. And I'm just so grateful for
No,
that. So
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
it was fun. It really was. And I'm excited that I met a new friend, one that
Yes.
I can share with my children, which is just exciting. So thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you. Thank you so much.
And Productive Joy friends, thank you for spending another 30 minutes with us. I hope that you have managed to find a couple wonderful nuggets of wisdom that you can take with you so that you can figure out a way to turn fun into action.